Welcome to the Healing Room. I'm Lavonda Handy, licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Truth Center for Health and Healing. This podcast is a space where we slow down, get honest, and reflect on truths that shape us. Here, you'll find real conversations, solo reflections, and stories that center healing culturally, personally, and collectively. And just so we're clear, this podcast isn't therapy, and I'm not your therapist. My hope is that every time you leave this space, you'll feel empowered, seen, and inspired to keep growing. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now let's get into it. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Room. I am Lavonda Handy, licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of Truth Center for Health and Healing, and I am so glad to have you all back with me. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining me. This space is a space for healing. This space is a space for connection, and I am so happy to have you here with me. If you were listening to episode 1, you know that this came out of me needing to slow down. I was in a place in my life where I think I was a little bit on a rat race of being a business owner and growing a group practice where I have several clinicians under me that I am developing, and then always trying to learn and grow in new ways. And I think I was trying to learn and grow too much, right? Like at some point, it just needs to slow down, right? And you be in the space that you are in and really get connected to it, right? And the healing room is a space that I get to truly get connected to the work that I do as a clinician, the work that I do as a supervisor, the work that I do as a mother, and how I show up as a wife and just a woman in today's society, and a Black woman too, right? And so today I wanted to spend a little bit more time with you all and just sharing more about myself, telling you about why I became a therapist. I think that story is it's funny to me, right? That's what I think. I think it's funny to me, but I love being a therapist. I think that helping others is in this way, right, is really unique because we get to hear so many stories in so many ways. And I always feel so honored when someone feels safe enough to tell me their story. And it's so funny. I always tell the people ask me, like, well, how did you know that you wanted to be a therapist? And I've known that I wanted to be a therapist since the 8th grade. I always tell a story that there's a couple that was in the 8th grade that asked me to be their couples therapist. And I was. And in that moment, I helped them. They stayed together for that time. I don't actually think they're together anymore, which I'm not going to say that's my fault, but I always had the passion for connection and connecting people. And initially when I was younger, I was always drawn to children. My mother owned a hair salon, and every time any of her clients came in with their children, I worked in the hair salon, so I was also like a shampoo girl. I would wash their hair and then I would play with their kids. It was just like a natural connection. But I believe that becoming a therapist, I initially wanted to work with children, right? My thought was, and I mentioned this in episode 1 as well, that I was thinking parents just don't understand, right? There are many children out here that are just trying to learn how to navigate the world. And us as parents are also still learning how to navigate the world. But with the limited resources as a child, right? If me as a parent, I'm not able to emotionally regulate, if I'm working on a way to just survive, me being emotionally available for a child is not necessarily always the case, right? And I take this personally, right? Because I had a father myself who was an addict, and that connection, right? That feeling of being lonely and wanting to be wanted was missing as I navigated his addiction. And I will say that for me, it took some times, right? As anyone who really cares about their parent, who wants them to be okay, to separate the addiction from our relationship. And what has been really meaningful to me in developing who I am as a clinician is studying that relationship in order to be a guide to help me to help others, right? Of how you find healing in different connections that maybe you won't be able to get that connection, or how to navigate it differently and accept the person for who they are. And I think teaching children that was like a real passion for me. And I initially worked in residential and worked with children that didn't necessarily have homes to permanently come to. They had, mostly behavioral issues of what they sent them in for. But as I was working there, I really recognized that it wasn't behavioral issues, right? I think that we misunderstand children of their behaviors are really their feelings that are being acted out, right? And we also do this as adults. When you get mad, you yell, you scream, you do whatever, right? But there's a feeling that's underneath that, right? And I wanted to be the one that helped the kids get that access to those feelings. But as I was working in that residential space, right, I had access to all these kids, right? And they were with me. If I worked a 40-hour shift that week, they were with me for those 40 hours. But at times they would get to go home to their families. And sometimes they weren't going home to their families. They were going home to foster families. But the difference was they were only with them for a weekend. So 48 hours tops back to back. And some of those hours are sleeping. Maybe they're doing other activities. But I had one-to-one, face-to-face working hours with these children. And this is before I even went into my master's program. I was just sitting there trying to navigate what else could I do? Because it felt like there wasn't enough that I can do if I've only seen these children this amount of hours for a week, and helping them regulate the emotions, have access to the emotions, and then sending them home to a family who potentially, right, there were other services that were in the home, but they weren't getting them as consistent as the children were in the residential space, right? What would it look like if I was able to be more with the families? What would it look like if I was able to connect with them more on such a deeper level? And then that's when it kind of led me to marriage and family therapy, right? There are many different avenues for becoming a therapist. You can be a licensed clinical social worker. You can be a licensed professional counselor. You could be a mental health professional. But what do these things mean, right? Like, what do they teach you in grad school? So as I was doing my research, I believe that marriage and family therapy literally pulled me in, right? I think my brain was a systemic brain already. And so as I am doing this residential work, that program is the program that really called to me. And I went to LaSalle University in Philadelphia, and I really enjoyed that because every family systems theory that I came in contact with, I was like, yes, this is me. Yes, that's me. And I was also able to relate it to my family, right? And I think that is the crucial thing, that being a really good therapist is really being able to apply these theories to yourself and do your first examination. Your first client in grad school should be yourself. I 100% felt that way, and that's 100% what I did. And as I was navigating that space, I really took that on. I took it on to explore myself as a clinician and what that meant for me. Like, what did it mean that I had an addictive father? What did it mean to have a stepfather and a mom that got remarried? And how my family systems worked. I applied that all to myself, and I will give just like a tip for you all, right? As you're navigating, if you want to go to therapy and seeing what that looks like.
if you are interested in going to therapy and navigating what that looks like, now granted, you're not going to be guaranteed to know this information or not, but a therapist for me who is able to do their own self work and what that looks like and live the therapy is 100% a good therapist. So any therapist I've ever came across, to me, is a really great therapist that can really apply the work to themselves and be successful at it, right? It's like a coach, right? If you are on a team, right? I was a competitive cheerleader for a really long time, and I would come across coaches that have never done competitive cheerleading in the manner that I've done competitive cheerleading. I'm like, how you gonna try to show me something if you can't do it? Right? Like for me, it is important that you can be able to accomplish the same task. If you haven't tried it, if you haven't failed and then succeeded at it, or failed and failed and failed, like how will you guide me to get to that same point? So I think it's really, really important for folks to be able to connect with somebody who's also done their own self work. And so finding an MFT program that really aligned to who I was and how I evaluated myself helped me grow as a clinician significantly. It's pretty funny that systems theories kind of aligns who I am because it's all about like feeling and being in connection with others. And this is funny. I was told I was too sensitive as a kid. I'm a Scorpio. Yeah, I'm really sensitive. But I also feel like it's just a naturally of who I am that I feel 100% of what's happening for others. And I can read that, I can sense it, and I'm really connected to it. And same for me. I'm connected to all my feelings. And I don't think we should just like move through them. I think we should sit with them. I think that is also, once again, how the healing room came about as me learning how to sit with the feelings that were happening, having me also not only sit with them, but be able to share them vulnerably, because that allowed me to be present to what was happening, right? And so, what is more vulnerable than starting a podcast, right? Like where I share myself and kind of what I've gone through and how I've gotten to where I am. And as I was working, that MFT program, I just happened to meet a woman that I felt I was like kinetically connected to as we both shared vulnerably in this class with one another. And she was like, you should come work for us and with us. And the program was a family based program. And so, family based is an intensive in home therapy system that, guess what, works with kids and their families, right? And it just laid out to be the perfect position for me, especially just being post grad. You got to work with kids and get to them before they got to the residential. For me, that was something that was really special. And being able to see kids before they got there and support the families in a more intense way really shaped who I am. It shaped who I am as a clinician and a human. Because I think when you enter in spaces, in people's personal spaces, you really do connect with them in a different way because it is a more vulnerable space, right? If I walk into someone's house and it's not cleanly, maybe they have, they're a lower SES, so maybe they don't even have chairs, right? There are certain situations that we got to experience that taught me what it means to just be connected, right? And what things are the most valuable and what things are not valuable in life, and really getting to see children not be sent to residential, what it got to meant to see, a parent for the first time have space to talk about their hardships. Because if they were a single mother, a single father, if they were recovering from some type of addiction, it allowed it to be just about them and not about survival. And that taught me a lot personally, how I could grow and how I showed up in a room for people, right? Regardless of our race, regardless of our culture, regardless of our financial background, it really humanized me. I think that being able to be with people in the most vulnerable spaces and then allow myself to be vulnerable with them too creates change like nobody's business. And I'm in the business of change and growth and healing. And family based truly taught me that, right? I think it gave me the space to really value being authentically myself and working hard to be present to when that was not present, because a client knows you better sometimes, because if you showing up to their house, they really get you in their space, they in yours too. They really get to know who you are. And I am so thankful for that experience. And I think it led me to wanting to be able to just connect and stay connected and to help people on a different level. I think that so family based just changed me. And also while I was working in family based, I started to have more experience being a supervisor and teaching and leading. And I will say that having a good supervisor also changes you. Someone that is, once again, going to teach you, someone who's going to guide you, someone who's going to coach you, and someone who wants you to be authentically you, right? Because I used to go into families' homes and I'd be so nervous. And I had one mentor say to me, she goes, just because you're not a parent doesn't mean you can't teach or coach parents. And I was like, huh, what you mean by that? And what she essentially meant and what she told me was, I've been a child before. I've been a kid and I know what needs that kids have, right? Like since I was closer to their age, I could really gain access to what kids needed. And I leaned into that heavily, right? And I lean into it now, even as a clinician, of like, we're adults that still have an inner child that needs something. And we're always trying to gain access to that. So why not make that attempt to gain access to it, even if I'm talking adult to adult? I want to know this is why I don't do small talk very well, because I want to know what happened in your childhood. I want to know who you truly are and what are the inner needs that you have. And I want to get connected to that. That's how I want to stay connected to the people that I surround myself with, right? And when I connect with my listeners, when I connect with my clients, I really want to know who they are authentically to the core. I want to know what their needs are so I can learn how to be there with them through that. And I want to be able to share that from a professional level with my clients as well, to gain that authentic feeling. And once again, I am working to whatever I'm working on for myself and looking deep within myself, I lead it with that authenticity so I can do the same for my clients, right? So I can lead them and guide them and support them to where they need to go in their life. And so I'm always asking myself, how am I showing up in this session? Who am I showing up as my authentic self? And I slow down, right? And so I do a lot of self with a therapist work, always reflecting and keeping myself in check around how am I showing up for myself and how am I sharing up for others. And so I have a few reflection questions for you all, right? Because I got to share a little bit about like how I became a therapist and how being authentically myself is really important. And so I want that for you all too. So what I want to share some for reflection questions of like, are you showing up for yourself authentically, right? And what does that look like for you? Because I think it looks different for everyone because we have different personalities, we have different likes, we have different all the things, right? So what does it look like for you to show up authentically for yourself? And when you give advice or when you give feedback to others, right? Are you also giving yourself advice and feedback and the same grace that you might give to someone else? Because we cannot be hard on ourselves and then be like, oh, Susie, it's all right. And then in my head, I'm beating myself up. That on track, right? So those are a couple reflection questions for you all. And can you challenge yourself to, one more question, can you challenge yourself to give others and yourself compassion, right? Can you work towards not criticizing, right? And being empathetic and exploring, okay, and not, and asking, not what's wrong with you, but what happened. Share with me what happened so I can really understand before I give any advice or any feedback. And it's not about being perfect, right? It is being real and staying connected. And authenticity takes practice, right? Some days that mask does go up for whatever reason, right? But we can feel that. We can feel it when the mask goes up. And then I challenge you to do what you need to do to help the mask come down. So thank you. Please comment, share, rate, feedback. I love it. I love feedback. And I love a good conversation because it helps us connect. So leave all those things for me. And I hope to see you next time. And reminder, I am not your therapist and this is not a therapy room. But if you do need support, please look for a local provider in your area to gather the support that you need. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining me in the Healing Room. If today's conversation spoke to you, be sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast with someone who could use a little healing too. Remember, this space is for reflection and inspiration, not therapy. If you need support, please connect with a licensed provider in your area. To learn more about me and my team, visit truthcenterhh.com. Until next time, keep honoring your truth.